High Counselor Zara's hands shook as she reached for the communication controls. Around her, the crystal spires of Andara Prime's capital city glowed with soft blue light, but that peaceful glow couldn't hide the terror in the air. Every Kithra on the planet knew what was coming. The Vex swarm. "Counselor," whispered her aide, Kef, his skin pattern shifting to deep purple with worry. "Are you certain about this?" "The Deathworlders, they're said to be monsters." "What if they're worse than the Vex?" Zara closed her large silver eyes for a moment. Through the crystal dome above them, she could see the first signs of the swarm, dark shapes blotting out the stars, growing larger by the hour. The Vex had already consumed 12 worlds in their sector. Billions of lives, snuffed out and converted into more machines. "Look at the sky, Kef," she said softly. "In 36 hours, those things will be here. Our children, our elders, our entire civilization, all will be gone. Fed into their horrible machines." Her skin flickered between orange fear and red determination. "I've read the old files. Humans are violent, yes. But they're also the only species that has ever made the Vex retreat." She activated the emergency beacon, her fingers dancing over controls that hadn't been used in living memory. The message would go out on the Galactic Emergency Network, reaching every corner of known space. But there was only one destination that mattered. Earth. The home of the Deathworlders. "This is High Counselor Zara of the Kithra Collective," she spoke into the transmitter, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We are a peaceful people under attack by the Vex swarm. They will reach our world in 36 hours. We have no weapons, no military, no way to defend ourselves. Please, if there's any mercy in the galaxy, help us." She paused, then added the formal words that she'd found in the old protocols. "We invoke the ancient compact. We call upon the Deathworlders." The message shot out across the void, faster than light, carrying the desperate hope of an entire species. Captain Sarah Chen was in the middle of her morning coffee when the emergency klaxon shattered the peaceful quiet of her ready room. Coffee splashed across her desk as she lunged for the communicator. Bridge to Captain, came the voice of her first officer, Commander Rodriguez. "We've got a Galactic Emergency Network transmission. It's an ancient compact call." Sarah's blood ran cold. The ancient compact was older than human spaceflight, a treaty signed by the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel. It was supposed to be used only in cases of extinction-level threats. In the 300 years since humans had joined galactic society, it had never been invoked. "On my way," she said, already heading for the door. The bridge of the Retribution was a hive of activity when she arrived. Her crew, 150 of the finest men and women the Human Defense Force could muster, were bent over their stations, faces grim. The main screen showed a star map with a red zone marked in the distant Andara sector. "Report," Sarah ordered. "Ma'am, the transmission came from the Kithra," said Lieutenant Kim at the communications station. "They're reporting a Vex swarm incursion. ETA to their homeworld is 18 hours from now." "Vex?" Sarah felt her jaw clench. She'd fought the mechanical horrors before, in the Rigel campaign. They were nightmares of self-replicating metal and malevolent AI, consuming everything in their path. "How big is the swarm?" "Unknown, but they've already taken 12 systems. The Kithra are completely defenseless, they're a pacifist species." Sarah looked at the tactical display. Andara Prime was 6 days away at maximum warp. Even if they left right now, they'd arrive to find nothing but floating debris in Vex factories. "Ma'am," said Rodriguez quietly, "there's something else. The message, it wasn't just sent to us. Every human ship in the sector received it. The Kithra don't know our protocols, they broadcast to all of us." A smile began to form on Sarah's face. A cold, dangerous smile that made her bridge crew straighten up with anticipation. "Open a channel to all human vessels in the sector," she ordered. "All frequencies. Emergency priority." "Channel open, ma'am." Sarah stood, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had stared death in the face and laughed. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution, to all human vessels. I'm sure you've all heard the transmission. The Vex swarm is about to commit genocide against the Kithra. She paused, letting that sink in. Now, I know what you're all thinking. We can't get there in time through normal space. But we're not talking about normal space, are we? Her smile widened. We're talking about a combat jump. A synchronized faster-than-light insertion right into the teeth of a Vex swarm. Static crackled over the comm channels, then voices began responding. UES Thunderstrike, standing by. This is the Yamato. We're with you, Retribution. UES Defiance, ready for combat jump. Ghost Squadron, all fighters accounted for. One by one, 23 human warships acknowledged. Sarah felt a familiar fire building in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when she first heard about Pearl Harbor in her history classes, or when she'd seen the footage of the 9/11 attacks. Humans didn't like bullies. And the Vex were the biggest bullies in the galaxy. All ships, begin combat jump calculations. Target, Andara Prime. We're going to show these tin cans what happens when you threaten innocence in human space. Ma'am, Rodriguez said quietly, the Kithra aren't in human space. Sarah's smile turned predatory. They are now. The Vex swarm had arrived like a plague of metal locusts. Hundreds of ships, each one a nightmare of sharp angles and glowing red sensors, hung in space around the beautiful crystal world. The largest vessels were the size of cities, their hulls bristling with harvesting equipment designed to strip planets bare. On the surface, the Kithra huddled in their cities, watching their gentle sky fill with the shadows of doom. Many had gathered in a grand assembly, holding their children close and singing the ancient songs of their people. If they were going to die, they would die with dignity. High Counselor Zara stood on the highest platform of the central spire, her skin patterns cycling through every color of grief and acceptance. No answer had come to their plea. The Deathworlders were probably too far away, or too busy with their own wars to care about one small species facing extinction. She was about to give the final address to her people when space itself seemed to tear open. Reality twisted and warped as 23 rifts opened in the void around Andara Prime. What emerged from those rifts made the Vex swarm look like children's toys. Human warships. The lead vessel was massive, bristling with weapons that the Kithra had no names for. Its hull was painted with the words UES Retribution and a symbol that looked like a bird of prey. Behind it came a fleet of destroyers, cruisers, and fighter carriers, each one built for only one purpose: war. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Retribution," came a voice over all frequencies, to the Vex swarm currently threatening Andara Prime. "You have 10 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from this system, or we will demonstrate why humans are called Deathworlders." The Vex response was predictable. The swarm turned toward the human fleet, weapons charging, ready to add these newcomers to their list of victims. 10 seconds is up, Sarah's voice said calmly. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what humans do to bullies." What happened next would be remembered in Kithra songs for 1,000 generations. The human ships didn't just attack, they attacked with a fury that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Missiles streaked through space like falling stars, each one guided by an AI smart enough to think around Vex countermeasures. Energy weapons cut through Vex hulls like they were made of paper. Fighter squadrons swarmed between the larger ships, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would have killed any other species. But it was the humans themselves that truly terrified the Vex. Where other species fought with cold efficiency, humans fought with something that machines couldn't understand: rage. They rammed damaged ships into Vex dreadnoughts. They set off nuclear charges inside enemy vessels. When the UES Defiance lost power, its crew manually aimed the ship at a Vex harvester and jumped to safety just before impact. The Vex had encountered many species in their expansion across the galaxy. They had calculated optimal strategies for defeating every known form of warfare. But they had never encountered anything like human tactics, because human tactics weren't just about winning. They were about making the enemy regret ever starting the fight. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the battle unfold with the calm of someone who had been born for this moment. "Commander Rodriguez, status report. Vex losses are at 60% and climbing. We've lost 3 ships, but all crews evacuated successfully. The Yamato is reporting heavy damage but still operational. And the Kythera? Safe. The Vex never got close to the planet. Sarah nodded. Around them, the last of the Vex ships were either fleeing or being systematically destroyed by the human fleet. But she knew this wasn't over. The Vex would be back, in greater numbers. Open a channel to the Kythera, she ordered. Channel open, ma'am. Hi Counselor Zara, this is Captain Chen. The immediate threat has been eliminated, but the Vex will return. We need to talk. High Counselor Zara had never seen a human before. She had expected monsters, beings of violence and aggression who solved everything with weapons. What she found was a woman not much different from herself, sitting calmly in the council chambers with 2 of her officers. Captain Chen was smaller than Zara had imagined, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of many battles. But when she spoke, her voice carried authority that made even the crystal walls seem to listen. Counselor, Sarah said, I'm going to be direct with you. The Vex don't give up. They'll be back, probably within a month, with 3 times as many ships. We hurt them today, but we didn't destroy their main hive. Zara's skin pattern shifted to pale yellow, confusion mixed with hope. Then, you're saying you'll stay? You'll protect us? That's exactly what I'm saying. Sarah leaned forward. But we need your help. The Kythera have something the human fleet needs, your crystal technology. Those communication arrays, your power sources, your ability to grow structures instead of building them. We've been fighting the Vex for 50 years, always on the defensive. But with your tech integrated into our ships, you could take the fight to them, finished Rodriguez. Zara looked around at her fellow counselors. Their skin patterns were a rainbow of emotions: fear, hope, uncertainty, determination. Finally, she spoke. Captain Chen, the Kythera have been pacifists for 3,000 years. We've never built weapons, never trained soldiers, never even raised our voices in anger. But today, you showed us something we'd forgotten. Her patterns shifted to bright gold: resolve. Sometimes, you have to fight to protect what you love. She stood, her tall frame elegant even in the low gravity of the council chamber. The Kythera Collective formally requests to join the Human Defense Alliance. We offer our technology, our worlds, and our people to your cause. In return, we ask that you teach us to defend ourselves. Sarah smiled, not the cold smile of battle, but something warmer. Counselor, there's something you should know about humans. We don't just protect our allies. We protect our family. And as of today, the Kythera are family. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Where once only peaceful crystal cities had dotted Andara Prime's surface, now massive shipyards hung in orbit like metal flowers. Kythera crystal technology had merged with human engineering to create something entirely new. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, but it wasn't the same ship that had arrived a month ago. Kythera crystals now grew through the hull like living veins, carrying power and information at the speed of thought. The weapons had been upgraded with crystal-focused technology that could punch through Vex armor like it was tissue paper. Captain, called out Lieutenant Kim, long-range sensors are picking up the Vex return fleet. Just as you predicted, 3 times the size of the first wave. And our forces? 47 human ships, plus the new Kythera defense fleet. The crystal ships are, well, they're something else. Through the view screen, Sarah could see them, sleek vessels that looked more grown than built, their hulls shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. The Kythera had turned out to be quick learners when it came to warfare. Their ships couldn't match human firepower, but they were fast, nearly invisible to sensors, and could coordinate their attacks through their crystal communication networks with a precision that left human tacticians speechless. Ma'am, Rodriguez said quietly, the Vex fleet is enormous. Over 300 ships, including 5 of their planet killers. Sarah nodded. She'd expected this. The Vex had been embarrassed by their defeat, and they were coming back to make an example of both the Kythera and their human protectors. Open a channel to all ships, human and Kythera. Channel open. This is Captain Chen to all allied vessels. 1 month ago, the Vex came to the system expecting to find victims. Instead, they found something they'd never encountered before: a species willing to fight for strangers, and a species willing to learn to fight for themselves. She paused, looking out at the approaching enemy fleet. Today, they return expecting to overwhelm us with numbers. They think we're the same species they've been fighting for decades. They're about to learn that humans and Kithra together are something new. Something they've never faced before. Her voice hardened. All ships, battle stations. Let's show them what happens when Deathworlders make friends. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, powered by Kithra crystals, moved through space like dancers of destruction. Their weapons, focused through living crystal matrices, tore through Vex hulls with impossible precision. But it was the coordination between human and Kithra forces that truly changed the game. Where human captains relied on training and instinct, Kithra commanders shared thoughts and emotions through their crystal networks. The combined fleet moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be, what they would do, before they did it. The Vex found themselves fighting an enemy that adapted faster than their computers could calculate. Every time they developed a counter-strategy, the Allied fleet had already moved on to something new. Direct hit on Vex flagship, called out the weapons officer. Their command ship is breaking apart. But Sarah was focused on the tactical display. The Vex were losing, but they were also learning. Their planet-killer ships were moving into position around Andara Prime, ready to crack the world open rather than let it remain free. All ships, new priority target, she ordered. Those planet-killers cannot be allowed to fire. Ramming speed if necessary. Ma'am, Rodriguez said urgently, we're getting a transmission from High Counselor Zara. She's asking permission to try something. Put her through. Zara's image appeared on the screen, her skin patterns cycling through colors Sarah had never seen before. Captain Chen, our crystal networks are linked to every piece of technology on this planet. If we overload the network, we can create a resonance wave that will shatter every Vex ship in the system. What's the cost? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. The crystals will burn out. All of them. Our cities, our technology, our way of life, everything will have to be rebuilt from scratch. Sarah felt her heart sink. The Kithra were willing to sacrifice their entire civilization to save it. Counselor, you don't have to. Yes, we do. Zara's patterns shifted to pure gold, absolute determination. Captain, you humans have a saying, freedom isn't free. Today, we learned what that means. Before Sarah could respond, the Kithra crystal network began to glow. Every crystal on the planet, every crystal in the fleet, every piece of Kithra technology started resonating at the same frequency. The effect was immediate and devastating. The resonance wave spread out from Andara Prime like a ring of pure energy, and when it hit the Vex ships, they simply stopped. Their hulls cracked. Their systems failed. Their AI cores shattered like glass. In the space of 30 seconds, 300 Vex ships were reduced to floating debris. The silence that followed was profound. On the surface of Andara Prime, every crystal had gone dark. The beautiful cities that had glowed for thousands of years were now just stone and metal. The Kithra had given up everything they were to save everything they could become. Sarah found her voice first. All ships, begin rescue operations. I want every Kithra evacuated to the human fleet immediately. Ma'am, Rodriguez said softly, what about the Vex? The main hive worlds? Sarah looked at the debris field that had once been the largest Vex fleet ever assembled. Then she looked at the dark world below, where an entire species had just sacrificed their past for their future. Commander, send a message to Earth. Tell them we're going to need every ship, every weapon, every human who's willing to fight. The Kithra gave up their world to stop the Vex here. The least we can do is make sure they never have to make that choice again. She stood, her decision made. We're not going to wait for the Vex to attack more innocent worlds. We're going to find their hive worlds, and we're going to end this war once and for all. The memorial garden on New Kithra was a wonder to behold. Grown from seeds saved from the original homeworld and nurtured by both human and Kithra hands, it combined the crystal technology of the ancients with something new, something that both species had built together. Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, walked the crystal paths with High Counselor Zara. The Kithra leader's skin patterns were different now, still capable of showing emotion, but with new colors that hadn't existed before. Colors that spoke of courage learned and friendship earned. "The memorial is beautiful," Sarah said, looking at the towering crystal spire that honored both the Kithra who had died in the original attack and the humans who had fallen in the 5-year war that followed. "It should be," Zara replied, her patterns shifting to warm amber, contentment mixed with pride. "After all, it commemorates the day two species learned that the best way to survive in this galaxy is together." They paused at the base of the memorial, where words were carved in both English and Kithran script. "Here lies the old way of thinking, that some species are too different to be friends, too violent to be trusted, too peaceful to be strong. Here begins the new way, that family is not about blood or birth world, but about who you choose to stand with when the darkness comes." Sarah smiled. "Any word from the outer colonies?" "The Rigelians have officially requested to join the alliance. Apparently, their first contact with humans went much better than expected." Zara's patterns shifted to amused purple. "Something about humans teaching their children to play baseball." "And the Vex?" Zara's patterns sobered to steady blue. "The last hive world was destroyed 3 months ago. Our joint fleets are now focusing on rescue operations, finding worlds the Vex had enslaved and helping them rebuild." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two friends who had helped change the galaxy. Around them, children played, human children with dark hair and bright eyes, Kithra younglings with shimmering skin, and here and there, other species who had joined the growing alliance. "You know," Sarah said finally, "when we first got your message, my crew thought we were flying to our deaths. 23 ships against a Vex swarm? It should have been suicide." "But it wasn't," Zara observed. "Because you didn't come to die. You came to live. To make sure others could live too." Sarah nodded. "That's what Deathworlders do, I guess. We don't just fight to destroy, we fight to protect. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find others who are willing to fight beside us." High above them, the first stars were beginning to show in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, human and Kithra ships patrolled together, keeping the peace in a galaxy that was finally learning that the strongest weapons weren't made of metal or energy. They were made of friendship, courage, and the willingness to answer when someone sends a plea across the stars. And in the darkness between the stars, any species thinking of threatening innocence would pause and remember the lesson of Andara Prime: if you hurt the helpless, the Deathworlders will come. And they won't come alone. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the construction of the latest Alliance station. Harmony Station would be the 15th Joint Human Kithra facility, serving as both a diplomatic hub and a rapid response base. The site never failed to amaze her, human engineering and Kithra crystal growing working in perfect synchronization. "Admiral," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Kef, the former aide to High Counselor Zara who had become one of the Alliance's finest tactical officers. His skin pattern showed the disciplined silver blue of focused concentration, but underneath, Sarah could detect hints of orange concern. "What is it, Kef?" "We've received a priority transmission from the Outer Rim. It's unusual." Sarah followed into the command center, where the main display showed a star map with a pulsing red indicator in the Kepler Drift, a largely unexplored region beyond the former Vex territories. "Report," Sarah ordered. Lieutenant Commander Park, the communications officer, looked up from her station. "Admiral, we intercepted what appears to be a distress signal from the Tau Ceti system. But here's where it gets strange: the signal is encrypted using Vex protocols, but the message claims to be from human survivors." Sarah felt her blood chill. "Human survivors? That's impossible. We evacuated all human colonies before we began the final push against the Vex hive worlds." "That's what we thought too, ma'am. But the signal contains authentication codes that check out. More specifically, they're codes from the UES Prometheus, a deep space exploration vessel that went missing 12 years ago." "The Prometheus." Sarah remembered the search efforts. The ship had been investigating reports of a pre-Vex civilization when contact was lost. After 6 months of searching empty space, they'd been declared lost with all hands. Play the message. The speakers crackled with static, then a voice emerged, human, but strained and desperate. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the UES Prometheus, to any Alliance forces receiving this transmission. We're alive, but we need immediate extraction. We've been prisoners of something called the Shadow Syndicate for over a decade. They're not like the Vex, they're worse. They're planning something big, something that could destroy the Alliance. Please, if anyone receives this, stay away from the Tau Ceti system. It's a trap. They're using us as bait, but we had to try to warn. The transmission cut to static. Sarah stared at the display for a long moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited in tense silence. Finally, she spoke. Get me High Counselor Zara. And send a priority message to Earth Command. We're going to need backup. High Counselor Zara's ship was a marvel of evolved Kithara technology. After the sacrifice of their homeworld, her people had rebuilt their civilization from the ground up, incorporating lessons learned from their human allies. The crystal harmony was both beautiful and deadly. Its organic curves housed weapons that could crack moons and shields that bent space itself. The signal troubles me, Zara said, her skin patterns cycling through complex colors that Sarah had learned to recognize as deep analytical thought. Not because it's from your missing ship, that's wonderful news, if true. But because of what it implies. Sarah nodded. They were in Zara's private chamber, a room where living crystal walls pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns. You think it's connected to the reports we've been getting from the Outer Rim? 3 shipping convoys vanished without trace. 2 exploration fleets found dead systems, worlds stripped bare, but not by Vex technology. And now this Shadow Syndicate. Zara's patterns shifted to dark purple, the color of grave concern. Sarah, what if the Vex weren't the only threat out there? What if, while we were fighting them, something else was growing in the darkness? Before Sarah could respond, both of their communicators chimed with an emergency signal. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through. Admiral, Counselor, you need to see this. We've got incoming ships, but they're not broadcasting any identification codes. The 2 leaders rushed to the Crystal Harmony's command center, where the main display showed tactical data from both their fleets. 20 ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, sleek vessels that looked like nothing in any Alliance database. Hail them, Sarah ordered. We've been trying, Admiral. No response. Their configuration is unlike anything I've seen, Zara mused, her skin pattern shifting to analytical blue-green. The hull design suggests advanced stealth capabilities, but they're not trying to hide. It's almost as if the lead ship suddenly accelerated toward the Alliance fleet with impossible speed. Energy readings spiked off the charts as weapons that defied classification began to charge. Evasive maneuvers. Sarah shouted. All ships, battle stations. But it was too late. The first salvo from the unknown ships tore through space with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The UES Defender, a heavy cruiser on the fleet's perimeter, simply vanished, not destroyed, but erased as if it had never existed. By the ancient crystals, Zara breathed, her patterns cycling rapidly through colors of shock and horror. They're using dimensional weapons. They're not destroying our ships, they're removing them from existence. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Alliance had faced. These weren't the mechanical predictability of the Vex or the honor-bound tactics of other species they'd encountered. The Shadow Syndicate ships moved like living things, their formations flowing like liquid mercury, striking with precision that suggested they knew Alliance tactics better than the Alliance did themselves. Admiral. Commander Park called out. We're receiving a transmission from the lead enemy vessel. On screen. The face that appeared was human, but wrong. The man's eyes held an intelligence that seemed too vast for a mortal mind, and when he smiled, Sarah felt something cold crawl up her spine. Admiral Sarah Chen, the figure said in a voice that carried harmonics no human throat should produce. How wonderful to finally meet the architect of the Alliance. I am Director Voss of the Shadow Syndicate. We've been watching your little experiment with great interest. What do you want? Sarah demanded. Want? We want what we've always wanted: evolution. The Vex sought to convert all organic life into mechanical perfection. Crude, but effective in its own way. We, however, understand that true evolution requires synthesis. The marriage of flesh, machine, and something far more fundamental. Voss's image gestured, and the display split to show the interior of what Sarah realized was the Prometheus. Human figures moved through the corridors, but like Voss, there was something fundamentally wrong about them. They moved with too much precision, their eyes held knowledge that seemed to burn, and their voices carried those same impossible harmonics. Your missing crew volunteered for the first phase of our work, Voss continued. They become something magnificent: human intellect enhanced by Vex computational power, guided by forces from dimensions your science cannot yet comprehend. And soon, Admiral, the rest of humanity will join them. Over my dead body, Sarah snarled. Voss's smile widened. Oh, Admiral. Death is such a limiting concept. We prefer transcendence. The transmission cut off just as 3 more Alliance ships vanished from existence. The mood in the hastily assembled War Council was grim. Representatives from a dozen Alliance species sat around the crystal table, their faces showing variations of fear, anger, and determination. The attack had cost them 8 ships and nearly 4,000 lives, or rather, 4,000 existences, since the crews hadn't died in any conventional sense. Intelligence analysis suggests the Shadow Syndicate has been operating in the Outer Rim for at least 2 decades, reported Captain Martinez of Alliance Intelligence. They appear to be a fusion of multiple species and technologies, but with human leadership, or what used to be human leadership. Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays. What do we know about their capabilities? Their dimensional weapons are beyond our current understanding, admitted Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Alliance's chief scientist. They're not simply destroying matter, they're removing it from our dimensional space entirely. As for their ships, they seem to incorporate Vex computational systems, but enhanced with technologies that don't appear in any of our databases. High Counselor Zara's patterns shifted to deep analytical blue. There's something else. During the battle, I felt something through the crystal network, a presence that was trying to probe our thoughts. This Shadow Syndicate isn't just technologically advanced. They're attempting some form of psychic manipulation. Ma'am, interrupted Commander Rodriguez, we're receiving another transmission. This one's from the Rigelian Confederation. Put it through. The hologram that appeared showed Ambassador Crix, the insectoid Rigelian who had been instrumental in his species joining the Alliance. His usually calm demeanor was shattered, his compound eyes reflecting patterns of panic. Admiral Chen, High Counselor Zara, we need immediate assistance. 3 of our outer colonies have gone dark. The last transmission we received showed ships matching the description of your attackers. But that's not the worst part. Crix paused, his antennae twitching with agitation. The few survivors we've managed to evacuate, they're not the same. They speak of visions, of voices calling them to join something greater. Some of them have volunteered to return to the affected systems. Sarah felt her heart sink. Psychological warfare. They're not just taking people, they're converting them. There's more, Crix continued. Our analysts have detected similar energy signatures around 7 other systems, all on the edge of known space. Whatever the Shadow Syndicate is, they've been building their strength while we fought the Vex. And now they're making their move. The transmission ended, leaving the War Council in heavy silence. Finally, Sarah spoke. We're facing an enemy that's had years to study us, that's learned from the Vex's mistakes, and that has capabilities we don't understand. They're not trying to destroy us outright, they're trying to convert us. Turn us into something else. The question is, said Zara, her patterns shifting to determined gold, how do we fight an enemy that doesn't want to kill us, but to change us into themselves? Dr. Warren cleared her throat. Actually, I may have an idea about that. If they're using dimensional weapons, then they must be accessing higher dimensional space. Kithra crystals naturally resonate across multiple dimensions. It's how your communication networks work at faster-than-light speeds. If we could tune the crystals to the same frequency as their weapons, we could create a dimensional shield, Zara finished, her patterns brightening with excitement. But the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need to network every crystal in the Alliance. Then that's what we do, Sarah said firmly. Send word to every Alliance world, every ship, every station. We're going to create the largest crystal network in galactic history. And then we're going to show the Shadow Syndicate what happens when they threaten our people. The Alliance fleet that assembled at the edge of Shadow Syndicate space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 400 ships from 20 different species, their hulls glowing with the light of millions of interconnected Kithra crystals. The network extended across light years, linking every vessel, every station, every world in the Alliance into a single, vast consciousness. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, her old ship, recalled from reserve and upgraded with the latest crystal technology. Around her, officers from a dozen species worked in perfect coordination, their thoughts linked through the crystal network but their individual personalities intact. "Status report," she ordered. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Kef, now serving as her chief tactical officer. "The dimensional shielding is online and holding steady. Dr. Warren's modifications appear to be working." Through the crystal network, Sarah could feel the presence of her entire fleet, not just their tactical status, but their emotions, their determination, their absolute faith in the alliance they had built together. And somewhere in that vast network of connected minds, she felt something else, the crew of the UES Prometheus, still alive, still human despite their captivity, calling out for rescue. "Take us in," she ordered. The Alliance fleet moved forward as one, their crystal shields shimmering with interdimensional energy. They had barely crossed into the Tau Ceti system when a Shadow Syndicate revealed the true scope of their power. Ships emerged from dimensional folds, not dozens, but hundreds. The Syndicate had been building their fleet in pocket dimensions, hidden from conventional sensors. But more terrifying than their numbers was their composition. Sarah could see the twisted remains of vessels from every species the Syndicate had encountered: human ships, Rigelian cruisers, even reconstructed Vex craft, all merged into nightmarish hybrids. "By the void," whispered someone on the bridge. "They didn't just capture those ships. They evolved them." Director Voss's image appeared on the main screen, but he was no longer alone. Behind him stood figures that had once been human, Rigelian, Kithra, and species Sarah didn't recognize. All bore the same burning intelligence in their eyes, the same impossible smile. "Admiral Chen," Voss said, his voice now carrying harmonics from multiple species, "how kind of you to bring us so many new subjects for evolution. Your crystal network is particularly interesting, a collective consciousness that maintains individual identity. We will study it carefully before we improve upon it." "The only thing you're going to study is the inside of a prison cell," Sarah replied. "All ships, engage." The battle that erupted was beyond conventional description. The Shadow Syndicate's dimensional weapons struck the Alliance fleet, but instead of erasing ships from existence, they splashed harmlessly against crystal shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. For the first time in the conflict, the Alliance had a defense against the Syndicate's primary advantage. But the Syndicate adapted quickly. Their ships began firing conventional weapons, energy beams and missiles that struck with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. The evolved crews of captured vessels fought with the tactical knowledge of their original species, but enhanced by impossible alien intelligence. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Park, "we're detecting massive energy buildup from the planet below. They're charging some kind of superweapon." Sarah looked at the tactical display and felt her blood run cold. The third planet of the Tau Ceti system, where the Prometheus crew was being held, had been transformed into a massive weapon platform. Energy readings suggested it could fire a beam capable of overwhelming even their dimensional shields. "All ships, priority target is the planetary weapon. We need to." She was interrupted by a new voice on the communications channel, a voice she recognized. "Admiral Chen, this is Commander Morrison of the UES Prometheus. We're still here, and we're still human. The Syndicate tried to convert us, but they made one mistake: they underestimated human stubbornness. On the display, Sarah could see the planet's surface erupting in explosions. The Prometheus crew, supposedly under Syndicate control, had turned against their captors. "We've seized control of the weapon platform," Morrison continued, his voice tight with strain. "But we can't hold it for long. The Syndicate is sending reinforcements, and some of our own people. Some of them did accept the conversion willingly. They're trying to stop us." Sarah made a decision that would define the next phase of the war. "All ships, new mission. We're not here to destroy the Syndicate fleet, we're here to rescue our people and deny them their superweapon. Kithra vessels, use your crystal networks to extract the human survivors. Human ships, provide cover. Everyone else, keep those Syndicate ships busy." "Admiral," Zara's voice came through the crystal network, carrying both admiration and concern, "that's a rescue mission in the middle of the largest space battle in Alliance history." Sarah smiled, the same cold smile she'd worn 7 years ago when first facing the Vex. "High Counselor, that's what Deathworlders do. We don't leave anyone behind." The next 30 minutes would be remembered as the most desperate rescue operation in galactic history. Kithra ships used their crystal technology to teleport through dimensional space, extracting human survivors from the planet's surface while under constant fire from Syndicate forces. Human vessels threw themselves between the rescue ships and enemy fire, trading hull integrity for time. Other Alliance species provided support with weapons, shields, and tactics that the Syndicate had never encountered. But it was the actions of the Prometheus crew that turned the tide. Commander Morrison and his people, after 12 years of captivity, managed to turn the planet's superweapon against the Syndicate fleet. The massive energy beam, designed to crack worlds, instead swept through the enemy formation like a sword of light. When the beam finally faded, half the Syndicate fleet was gone, not erased from existence, but genuinely destroyed. The remaining ships began to retreat into dimensional folds, but not before Director Voss delivered one final message. "This changes nothing, Admiral. We have learned much from this encounter. Your dimensional shields, your rescue tactics, your admirable determination to save everyone, we will adapt to all of it. And when we return, we will be stronger." His image smiled that impossible smile. "Evolution never stops, Admiral Chen. And neither do we." Admiral Sarachin stood in the memorial garden that had been expanded to honor those lost in the Shadow Syndicate conflict. The walls now bore the names of 4,000 Alliance personnel who had vanished in the dimensional attacks, not dead, but removed from existence in a way that defied human understanding of loss. Commander Morrison stood beside her, still bearing the scars of his 12-year captivity but very much human. The Prometheus crew had provided invaluable intelligence about the Shadow Syndicate's operations, but the picture they painted was troubling. "They're not like any enemy we've faced," Morrison said quietly. "The Vex wanted to convert everything to their mechanical perfection. The Syndicate wants something more fundamental. They want to evolve all life into something that transcends individual species, individual identity. They see it as the next step in galactic evolution. And they're patient," Sarah added. "They've been building their strength for decades, studying every species they encounter, learning from every defeat. This was just their opening move." High Counselor Zara approached them, her skin pattern showing the complex interplay of hope and determination that had become her signature. "The Alliance Council has reached a decision. We're establishing a new division, the Dimensional Defense Force. Ships equipped with crystal shielding, crews trained in anti-conversion techniques, and most importantly, a mandate to explore the regions beyond known space." Sarah nodded. "We can't wait for them to come to us again. We need to find them before they're ready for their next offensive." "There's something else," Zara continued. "The other galactic powers, the Hegemony, the Trade Federation, even the isolationist Void Walkers, they're all reporting similar encounters. The Shadow Syndicate isn't just targeting the Alliance. They're working to convert the entire galaxy." Morrison looked up at the stars visible through the garden's crystal dome. "You know what this means, don't you? We're not just fighting for the Alliance anymore. We're fighting for the right of every species to remain what they are, to evolve naturally instead of being forced into someone else's vision of perfection." Sarah felt a familiar fire building in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when Akithra first called for help, the same determination that had driven humanity to face the Vex. But this time, it was bigger. This time, it wasn't just about protecting allies or defeating invaders. This time, it was about protecting the very concept of free will in a galaxy where something was trying to make that choice for everyone. "Then we'd better get started," she said quietly. "Because if the Shadow Syndicate thinks they can decide the future of evolution for the entire galaxy, they're about to learn the same lesson the Vex did." She looked at her companions, a human who had survived 12 years of captivity and refused to break, and an alien who had sacrificed her world's entire civilization to save it. Around them, the memorial garden hummed with the gentle light of Kithra crystals, grown from technology that had been freely shared between species who had chosen to trust each other. They're about to learn that when you threaten free will itself, the Deathworlders don't just come. Sarah smiled, and in that smile was the promise of battles yet to be fought, of rescues yet to be mounted, and of an alliance that would never stop growing, never stop fighting, and never stop believing that some things were worth any sacrifice. "We bring everyone." Dr. Elizabeth Warren stared at the readings on her screen for the 4th time in an hour, hoping they would somehow change. They didn't. The dimensional resonance patterns were unlike anything she'd ever seen, not the sharp, aggressive frequencies of Shadow Syndicate weapons, but something far more subtle and infinitely more disturbing. "Computer, run analysis protocol Warren 7 on the quantum flux data from Sector 447. Analysis complete. Dimensional membrane integrity in Sector 447 has decreased by 0.003% over the past 72 hours. Pattern suggests systematic weakening rather than natural degradation." Elizabeth rubbed her eyes. She'd been working for 18 straight hours, but sleep seemed impossible when facing data that suggested someone was quietly unraveling the fabric of reality itself. "Dr. Warren," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Kalavesh, a Kithra scientist whose crystal-enhanced neural network had made her one of the Alliance's foremost experts on dimensional physics. Her skin pattern showed the deep purple of extreme concern. "You need to see this," Kalavesh continued. "We've been monitoring the quantum foam around former Vex territories, and we're detecting something unprecedented." Elizabeth followed her colleague to the main laboratory, where a 3-dimensional hologram showed a map of local space. Scattered throughout the former Vex regions were small red dots, each pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. "What am I looking at?" "Dimensional anchor points," Kalavesh explained, her patterns shifting to analytical blue-green. "Someone is systematically installing devices that stabilize reality at specific quantum frequencies. But here's what's truly disturbing: the frequencies match the neural resonance patterns of converted Shadow Syndicate personnel." Elizabeth felt her blood chill. "They're not just trying to change people. They're trying to change space itself to be more compatible with their converted minds. That's our theory. But if we're right, the implications are staggering. If they complete this network of anchor points, they could potentially force a dimensional evolution on any consciousness that enters the affected regions. Conversion without capture." Before Elizabeth could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The main display shifted to show an incoming priority transmission from Alliance Command. Admiral Chen's image appeared, but she looked different, older, more worn, with the weight of command clearly taking its toll. "All senior research staff, we have a code black situation. Dr. Warren, I need you and your team ready for immediate deployment. We've lost contact with the exploration fleet that was investigating the Helix Nebula." "Lost contact how?" Elizabeth asked. "They reported finding something incredible, an ancient derelict of unknown origin, larger than anything in our databases." "Then their last transmission was—" Sarah paused, her expression troubled. "They said they were going to make contact with the ship's inhabitants. Inhabitants that had been dead for millions of years." Elizabeth exchanged glances with Kalavesh. "Admiral, we need to brief you on our findings here. I think the Shadow Syndicate may have discovered something in that nebula, something that predates them, the Vex, maybe even the first species to achieve spaceflight." Sarah's expression grew grimmer. "Pack your research. You're coming with us." If there's something out there that the Shadow Syndicate wants badly enough to risk exposure, then we need to get to it first. The Alliance task force that entered the nebula was smaller than Sarah would have preferred, only 40 ships, but all equipped with the latest dimensional shielding and crewed by personnel who had undergone rigorous anti-conversion training. The nebula itself was beautiful and terrifying, its swirling gases lit from within by energies that seemed to shift between dimensions. "Admiral," reported Commander Kef from the tactical station, "we're picking up debris from the UES Explorer. Hull fragments, escape pods, but no life signs. Any indication of what happened to them?" "That's the strange part, ma'am. The damage patterns don't match any known weapons. It's almost as if the ship was dissolved. Broken down at the molecular level." Sarah studied the tactical display. Somewhere in this nebula was the ancient derelict that had cost them an entire exploration fleet. And somewhere else, the Shadow Syndicate was pursuing their own agenda. "Dr. Warren, what can you tell us about this region?" Elizabeth looked up from her portable laboratory setup, where she'd been analyzing the nebula's exotic energies. "The dimensional readings here are off the charts, Admiral. Whatever's at the center of this nebula, it's been affecting local spacetime for eons. The energy patterns suggest technology that's not just ancient, it's from a completely different evolutionary path than anything we've encountered." "Different how?" "Well, every species we've met has followed roughly the same technological progression: basic tools, then energy manipulation, then dimensional access. But this..." She gestured at her readings. "This appears to be technology that began with dimensional manipulation and worked backward. As if someone started with control over reality itself and then developed more conventional tools as an afterthought." High Counselor Zara's voice came through the crystal communication network from her flagship. "Admiral, my scientists are detecting something else. The dimensional anchor points that the Shadow Syndicate has been installing, they're all oriented toward this location. Whatever's in this nebula, it's the focal point of their entire conversion network." Sarah was about to respond when space around them suddenly shifted. Not in any way that sensors could detect, but every conscious being on every ship felt it, a moment of disconnection, as if reality had briefly forgotten they existed. "Contact," shouted the sensor operator. Massive object emerging from dimensional fold, bearing 27 Mark V. The ship that materialized before them defied every principle of engineering Sarah knew. It was vast, easily 50 kilometers long, but it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Parts of it appeared solid, while other sections flickered between visible and invisible, as if they couldn't quite decide which reality they belonged to. And it was moving. "Admiral," whispered Dr. Warren, staring at her instruments in awe, "that ship, it's not just ancient. According to these readings, parts of it are older than the universe itself." "That's impossible." "Yes, ma'am. It should be. But the quantum signatures don't lie. Whoever built this ship was manipulating reality when our universe was still cooling from the Big Bang." The ancient vessel continued its approach, and as it drew closer, Sarah could see that its hull was covered in symbols that seemed to write themselves across her vision. More disturbing, she found herself beginning to understand them. "Greetings, young ones. We have been waiting." The voice spoke directly into the minds of everyone in the fleet, not through communication systems, but through the quantum foam that connected all conscious thought. Sarah felt her crew's fear spike, but also their determination. These were Alliance personnel, trained to face the impossible. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Alliance Defense Force. Identify yourself and state your intentions. We are what you would call the architects. We shape the laws that govern how consciousness interacts with reality. What you call the Shadow Syndicate are our, shall we say, distant students. They have learned some of our techniques, but they lack understanding of the true purpose." Images began flowing into their minds, visions of the universe in its infancy, when the laws of physics were still malleable. Ancient beings of pure thought shaping reality through will alone. The development of consciousness itself as a force that could alter the fundamental nature of existence. We have watched as organic life evolved across the galaxy. Most species follow predictable patterns, they develop technology to change their environment rather than themselves. But occasionally, a species emerges that understands the deeper truth: consciousness itself is the ultimate tool. The Shadow Syndicate, Sarah said aloud, fighting against the alien presence in her mind. You're the ones who taught them to convert other species. They discovered fragments of our knowledge and misunderstood our purpose. We seek to guide evolution toward its natural culmination, beings of pure consciousness, unbound by the limitations of matter or energy. The Syndicate seeks only to absorb other forms of life into their collective. They are parasites wearing the face of evolution. Dr. Warren stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. What do you want from us? Want? We wish to complete what we began eons ago. The universe has reached a critical juncture. Either consciousness will evolve beyond the need for physical form, or it will be consumed by those who would corrupt the process. The choice is before you now. On the main display, space around the ancient ship began to ripple. Reality itself was bending, creating a sphere of altered physics that expanded outward toward the Alliance fleet. Evasive maneuvers. Sarah shouted. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. But as the sphere of altered reality touched the outermost ships, something unexpected happened. Instead of being converted or destroyed, the crews reported a sudden expansion of awareness. Engineers found themselves understanding technologies they'd never seen before. Tactical officers perceived battle strategies of impossible complexity. Scientists grasped theoretical frameworks that bridged the gap between mind and matter. Admiral, came Commander Rodriguez's voice, filled with wonder, I can see it all. The dimensional network the Syndicate is building, the anchor points, their true purpose. They're not just trying to convert individuals, they're trying to create a universe where only their form of consciousness can exist. Sarah felt the expansion of awareness touching her own mind, and for a moment, she could perceive the galaxy as the architects did, billions of conscious beings, each one a point of light in a vast network, but most of them isolated, unaware of their true potential. And in that expanded awareness, she saw the Shadow Syndicate's plan in its full scope. They weren't just installing dimensional anchors, they were preparing to rewrite the quantum foundations of reality itself. Soon, the only form of consciousness that could exist would be their hybrid collective. Every other form of awareness would simply cease to function. How long do we have? She asked the architects. In your terms, perhaps 6 of your months before the network reaches critical density. After that, the transformation will be irreversible. And you? What's your role in this? We offer evolution willingly given, consciousness expanded through choice rather than force. But the decision must be made freely, and soon. The Syndicate's corruption spreads with each world they convert. If they succeed, even we cannot undo what they will have done. Sarah felt the weight of decisions settling on her shoulders. Accept the architect's offer and potentially lose humanity as they knew it, or face the Shadow Syndicate's forced conversion of the entire galaxy. I need to consult with my fleet, with the Alliance Council. This decision affects every species in known space. Of course. But know this, the Shadow Syndicate has detected our awakening. They come even now, seeking to claim our knowledge for themselves. Whatever choice you make, it must be made soon. As if summoned by the architect's words, new contacts appeared on the sensors. Shadow Syndicate ships, hundreds of them, emerging from dimensional folds throughout the nebula. At their head was a vessel Sarah recognized, the converted Prometheus, now transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. Director Voss's image appeared on their communications channel, but he was no longer recognizably human. His form shifted between flesh, machine, and something that existed in the spaces between dimensions. Admiral Chen, he said, his voice carrying harmonics from a dozen species, how wonderful that you've led us to our creators. The architect's knowledge will complete our evolution. Soon, every conscious being in the galaxy will join our collective perfection. Over my dead body, Sarah replied, but even as she spoke, she wondered if conventional warfare could stop beings who could rewrite the laws of physics. Admiral, came the architect's voice in her mind, the choice comes sooner than anticipated. Will you trust in evolution freely chosen, or will you allow forced conversion to consume all consciousness? The galaxy's future depends on your decision. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew, human, Kythera, Rigelian, and a dozen other species, all united in their determination to preserve freedom of choice. In the crystal network, she could feel the minds of her entire fleet, ready to follow her into whatever battle lay ahead. "All ships," she announced, "prepare for engagement. Whatever these architects are offering, we'll face that choice when this threat is ended. Right now, our job is to stop the Shadow Syndicate from making that choice for everyone." She turned to address the architects directly. "We'll need your help to stop them. But understand, any evolution we undergo will be our choice, made freely, with full knowledge of what we're becoming. That's what separates us from the Syndicate." "Very well, Admiral. Let us show the Syndicate the difference between evolution and parasitism." The ancient ship began to glow with energies that predated matter itself, while around it, the Alliance fleet prepared for a battle that would determine not just the survival of their species, but the nature of consciousness in the galaxy. In the space between stars, two visions of evolution prepared to collide, one based on choice and growth, the other on conversion and absorption. And caught between them, the Alliance fleet stood ready to ensure that whatever the galaxy's future held, it would be chosen freely by those who lived it. The battle for the nature of reality itself was about to begin.